What year were you born?
1931.
Okay.
And I was born at home, and my parents lived about 4 or 5 miles from Goddard. And I was born to a family. They had 5 children. And so I was number 6. Then as the years went by, there was 5 more. So it was 11 of us. And we lived on a farm. And my dad raised cattle. And I was born just during the Depression, just not too long before it was over. My dad told me that my mother's parents lived a ways, and they didn't have the money to buy a stamp to tell them that I was born. And then, but anyway, as we grew up, I had a sister that was a year younger than me, and she was 3 and I was 4. And my dad had been working, helping a neighbor cut corn. And so he was coming home with horses and hay rack and pulling a corn binder. And of course the kids all run out to greet their dad. And my younger sister got on and Dad didn't see her. And she got on the tongue of the corn binder, and he ran over her.
Oh my gosh.
And it was tragic. But a neighbor was a quarter of a mile away, and he heard the screaming and yelling at our house. He said, "Something's wrong." And so he came over, and but Dad picked her up and carried her up on our front porch. And we had like a couch, or it was a bed on the front porch. And he laid her on the bed until he called the doctor. And the doctor came out. And then the highway patrol came. And they were accusing Dad of doing it on purpose. And of course, you know how distraught Dad must have been. But anyway, that neighbor went around the side of the house where they were, and he cussed that highway patrolman up one side and down the other.
As he should.
And so he left, and it was 100 and some degrees out during August. And they had undertaker come to the house, and they embalmed her at the house. And Dad made her coffin, And anyway, they had the funeral the next day.
Can you tell me about your mom?
I was 7 years old when my mother had the 11th child, and she did all right, but she was on the fifth day after she had the baby. She got real sick, and she coughed and coughed and coughed. And Dad says, "I'm tired of hearing you cough. I'm calling the doctor." And so we had a doctor that made house calls. And so he came out to the house and he said he didn't know, but he thought we should take her to the hospital. So he took her to the hospital in Wichita. We had a neighbor that was over there, and he took care of us kids, and my dad took the baby and went to my mother's sister. She had a baby the same day, so she said she would watch the baby. So she took the baby, and she tried to nurse him, and he wouldn't nurse, and he just cried and cried all the time. So then my uncle, I'm tired of listening to that kid cry. He said, "I'm giving her cow's milk." So he milked cows also. So he went out and got some cow's milk and came back and fixed him a bottle, and he took off. He never drank anything but cow's milk. And so that was how he got started. Then he quit crying. But my mother died 18 days after the baby was born. And I asked the doctor after I grew up some why she died. And he said she had a ruptured pancreas. Said you have two tubes that lead to your pancreas, to your body. One carries the good juices and one carries the bad. And the one that carried the bad broke. And it sent this through infection through her whole body. And so anyway, that was 18 days after the baby was born. And we had two neighbors and a young lady, and she came to the house and stayed. And well, my dad was gone. And then the other neighbor was a single young man that had just bought a house about a quarter of a mile from where we lived. And he come over every day and did the chores, milked the cows and stuff, and made sure everything was okay. And my dad didn't come home for 10 days. And after while he took my mother to the hospital, he stayed there. But he had checked by phone with these two neighbors. And so, but I was 7 and I grew up, and my oldest sister was 14. We had a hired girl for about a year probably. But when my sister graduated down the 8th grade, she stayed with didn't go to high school. She stayed home and took care of the kids. But the rest of the kids all got to go to high school. So when she got to be 19, maybe a little older, she left home. And my aunts just threw a fit with my dad for not sending her to high school or so. She said she needs to get out and go to work and meet people. So she left home, and she went to stay with my grandmother, and got her job at Beach Aircraft. And then she got laid off at Beach. They were laying off people. So then she got a job at Rohrbach Bucks on the corner of Douglas and what is it, Douglas and Broadway. And she worked there for 3 years, I think, and she met her husband and she got married. Well, the next sister was 3 years older than me. So between her and me, we did all the laundry and house cleaning and cooking and everything. And so this sister was then a senior in high school. So when she graduated from high school, she left home. And then that left me, the oldest, and I had a younger sister, 3 years. She went to the convent. So that left me with the rest of the family. And so then I finished high school, and I stayed home from college for 3 years. And then when I got a chance, I would work for all of the women around that had babies, and I'd stay at their house while they were in the hospital and go back and forth. I'd usually have the weekend off, and I'd go home on the weekend and do things. But all while I was in high school, I had to do the family laundry and cooking and everything.
A lot of your life was spent being a mother.
Huh?
A lot of your life was spent being a mother to your siblings.
Yeah. And so I did all, that. And but while I was home, your dad would butcher and render the Lord, and I'd help do that. But I learned how to cook, and so then I left home, went to work at Wichita, and I worked at J.M. McDowell Clothing Company. There was one on 120 North Main, and the other was in Boulevard Plaza. Well, I went to work at the Boulevard Plaza, and I worked there about 6 months, and I asked the boss for a 2-week vacation. He looked at me and laughed. He said, Norma, you haven't even been here long enough to earn 1 week. And I looked down and I thought, okay, when I hired in, you told me I had to give 2-week notice. So I said, this is my notice. I'm quitting in 2 weeks. He says, you gotta be kidding. And I said, no. Anyway, he left the office. I was the head bookkeeper. And a week went by, and I said, you haven't hired anybody to replace me. He said, you weren't kidding, was you? I said, no, I wasn't. I said, I got 1 more week, and it'll be 1st of June, and I'm quitting. And I did. But he did hire somebody. So I went home and helped my dad through harvest. The boys were there, but the girls, by his rules, the girls took care of the house and the boys did the outside work and did milking and whatever. So we got through that. And then I met my husband.
How old were you when you met your husband?
25. I had my first child when I was 26. And then I had to have a C-section because I had a misproportioned pelvic. I'd injured it sometime during my life. And anyway, so then I thought, well, I'll stay off work about 3 months and go back. And I told my husband, says, well, you can't work then. So my second was born on the very same day as my first child. And so then I thought, oh, I'll go back to work again, but I'll stay off work for maybe 6 months. So then I'll go back, you know. I was pregnant again on the very same day.
Oh, Lanta.
So I had 3 children, all born on the same day, a year apart.
Oh, wow.
And so then he said, Norma, you don't make enough money to pay for a babysitter, so you just well stay home, take care of the kids. So I had 5 children then in 5 years.
Wow.
And I felt like a little mother hen with all the little chickens following.
Oh.
So I was a stay-at-home mom until I had 4 that went to Bishop Carroll High School and 1 in a grade school. And then I decided, well, I didn't need a babysitter, so I'd go back to work. And I could have went back to KG&E, but it's downtown. I had to have parking lot. I had to have my hair done every week, dress up, wear high heels. So I decided I didn't want to do that. It was too far from school. So I got a job at Shepler's in accounting. And I promised my husband he didn't want me to work. And I said, I've got to work, help pay for blue jeans, the kids in high school. And he was on the fire department, and they don't make very good money. We couldn't live on his salary. So then that 1 year turned into 17 and a half. I enjoyed working in accounting. And so I was 62, so I retired. But he had retired 6 years before I did. So, but we raised our kids and sent them to school, you know. So all my children all grew up and all went to college but one. And he had worked at Star Lumber for 9 years. And we tried to get him to go to college. He said, no, I bought a car and I'm going to pay for that car. And he said, don't worry about the car. I'll make the payments. He wouldn't do it. So 9 years after he worked at Star, they promised, he asked him, he said that he had applied for the fire department, and would they pay him while he went to college. And he asked his dad, said, Dad, what do I do to get on the fire department? And he told him, go back to college, go to college, and then take all the math you can get, and fire science, and EMT. But Tony loved it. But after the first year, he got on the fire department.
Did your father ever get remarried?
Yes, my dad did. He, when I was married already and had 2 children, and he had 2 women that were chasing him. And so he come in one day and he said, problem. He always come to me for advice. The other kids he didn't, but to me he did, because I was home, you know, with him that 3 years after high school.
Yeah.
He said, what would you say if I told you I was getting married? And I said, married? To who? And he said, well, the 2 women's names. And I knew both of them. I said, can you afford to support her in the way she's accustomed to living? He said no. So we asked the other one, she was a poor lady and had 5 kids that were grown. So they got married, and they were married 26 years before he passed away.
Oh.
So that was a while. But it's crazy, you know. But
Did the women that he dated, did they know about each other?
do the women? Oh yeah,
They did?
oh yeah. They didn't live really 5-6 miles apart. But she was a very wealthy lady and had a single son that lived with her, and he was gay. And of course, I knew that too, you know. But she called him one weekend. We had a party line, and whenever their telephone rang, it rang into 12 different homes, and you pick it up by signal. And she called him and asked him to spend the weekend with her at Marion Lake. She had a cabin over there, and he turned her down. And the neighbors got somebody, you'd pick it up and listen to everybody else's phone.
Oh.
And somebody heard that, and then it spread through the whole neighborhood. And so every time our telephone would ring, you pick up the receiver and you hear that many receivers going up. Everybody was listening.
Oh no.
That
was phones back then. They weren't very
crazy.
private. Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. So, but I guess he chose the right one. They get older. One had been single for 21 years and one 28, and they fought like cats and dogs.
Over your dad?
Whenever I'd go out there, well, you know, I could see it, you know.
The 2 ladies fighting?
And my dad and his wife.
Oh.
I says, Dad, why don't you divorce her? He said, I would never do that. Once I married her, I'm married.
That's a good man.
He was a very good man. And I don't ever remember growing up and asking my dad for money for something going on at school, or if I needed clothes or something that he didn't give me the money for. He raised 10 kids through all of that, you know, by himself.
And you helped.
Yeah.
And you raised 5 of your own.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you were an amazing mom. You shaped and
you
raised all of these boys. And
well, I did all the cooking and sewing. You can't believe how many jeans, and back then they wore overalls, and how many overalls I patched. And we had an old Singer sewing machine with pedals, and you pumped them as you sewed. And my sewing, when I was a sophomore in high school, my dad bought me a sewing machine. And I said, well, what'd you do that for? He said, I got tired. He went to bed early, and I never had time to sew till night. And he said, I got tired of you cussing a sewing machine. So he went out and bought me a new sewing machine.
Mm.
So I still had it till I moved in here, but I had replaced, with another. So, yeah,
Do you feel like marriage is hard?
no,
No?
no, I had a good husband.
Very good husband. Do you feel like a marriage is work?
Yeah,
Do you feel like a marriage is work?
if that's what you want, it depends on you
Yeah.
if that's what you want.
Yes. Is there any advice that you would give to mothers in this generation?
No,
No?
I think if you're going to have children, you should raise them yourself and not somebody else. But I can see while I had my children up and down the street, I did everything with the kids, went to their activities and all that, and took them to base. We'd spend every night in the baseball park. But I see other kids in the street, up the street where their mothers worked, and I could see how they were always getting in trouble and stuff because when they got out of school, nobody was home, but I was always there.
Do you feel like it's best for the child for the mom to be with the child?
I think it's a good thing that the mother take care of her children.
Yeah.
I know all my daughters-in-laws, you know, they're all was good mothers, but they all worked. They had to work.
Yeah.
This day and age, they had to work.
Yeah. It's not easy.
I know. I don't know how they even pay their grocery bills now.
Yeah. It's expensive.
But where I never, when the kids were little, I never bought a box of cake mix, or anything already pre-cooked groceries. I'd cook everything from scratch. And there was a little grocery store about 2 blocks from where I lived, and we only had one car, and so I would take the wagon, and kids, 2 or 3 of the little ones, get in the wagon, and the other 2 would walk, and we would walk to the grocery store maybe twice a week, and buy groceries. This little store, he had the back room, storage. The meat that was on the counter, one day, he would take it off and put it in a freezer in the back room, and he reduced the cost of it quite a bit. And I remember paying 25 cents a pound for meat, hamburger and stuff, chicken and stuff like that, roast beef, where you don't do that now.
Now it's
And
yeah,
and coffee was about 49 cents a pound, and but I bought everything that I could reduce, and I did that for probably 3 or 4 years when the kids were little, until we moved out of the neighborhood. So when we moved out of the neighborhood, I lost that, I had to shop at Dillon's then.
Did you like Dylan's?
Do I like Dillon's? Yeah, they're high, but I like their meats.
Yeah.
And,
Now, for a pound of meat, for
huh?
a for a pound of 98% or 96% beef, it's almost $10
Oh, I know it.
for 1 pound.
You can't afford to buy roast beef
Yeah.
or steak.
Or just ground beef is expensive. Everything is
I know
expensive.
what ground beef is.
Yeah. The cost of living is so high these days. And
But when I had 5 little ones, and there was a milk route of, of a farm, and they bottled the milk, and they had a truck, they had a route where they delivered. Well, I ordered from them, I think 3 times a week, 2 gallons of milk. And I said, we went through all that milk. And I said, I used to swear that out of every gallon, I wiped a quart of it off the floor.
oh yeah, kids are messy.
Yeah.
Is there any advice that you would give to just the younger generation?
I don't care. They wouldn't believe me anyhow.
Yes, they would.
They don't. Uh, they don't work like I worked. I bet there ain't one child in 100 that had to work like I worked. I could come home from school, high school, and fix supper for 7 people or 8 at times. But the boys were always bringing somebody home to stay all night. Then
More
they'd
work.
go to a school event or something. So there was one time when my brother had invited this guy to come and stay all night. They wanted to go somewhere, and neither one of them had cars, but Dad used to let them take our car. And then during the night, he got a phone call, and he said his mother passed away. And they wanted to know if his son was there. And Dad said, I don't know. Let me count the shoes around here.
Oh.
And he said, there's an extra pair here. He's probably here. So he went up and woke him up and told him his mother had passed away. And so then Dad took him home. He rode a horse. We lived 2 miles. So he rode a horse from his house to our house.